it's your girl cassienaija and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over my July wrap up. I read about 18 books for the month of July. So I wanted to just do my wrap up with a simple like yes, no, or maybe. I'll share like a little bit of the books to justify why I gave it that rating, so to speak. Out of the 18 books, only 2 of them were physical copies. And that's not typical for me. Usually it's about half and half. Lately, if I am trying to get on my Zoom, because I did have like a Goodreads book goal of 50 books, which I hit last month, or no, it's July. So in July, which is really cool. And that was a big goal of mine. I wanted to hit that in the summer so that I can power through and just see how many I can get through for the rest of the year. So the first book I read for the month of July is The Rival Bid by Reese Ryan. That one is very short, kind of like a novella. And I think it was nice to start the month off with because it is like the perfect beach read. You could probably, if you're on your Zoom, get through it in like one sitting. And have the classic like enemies to lovers trope. I would give that one a yes. The second book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. That one is, I'm gonna just give it straight down the middle, a maybe. And I say that because though I did enjoy it, I do recognize that the author is problematic. And I also read the book for free, so it was like nothing as far as direct support, so to speak. But I did want to just read it just to kind of see the hype, to be honest with you. So I'm giving that one a maybe because questionable ethics and all of that. But it was a good book, in my opinion. But so I'll give it that one little thing, but I don't think I'll be invested in that series. The third book I read was Cant Resist Her by Kiana Alexander. I was initially really excited by this book because it seemed to have LGBT, specifically the L representation. The cover was really pretty. However, this one I DNF. And honestly, a lot of that may be chalked up to the fact that I listened to it in audiobook and I did not care for that audio at all. That's another thing about listening to audiobooks is that it is make or break based off of who the voice actors are. And that's no shade. Everyone is trying, but it wasn't my cup of tea. But also just the dialogue too was like really strange. It kind of gave old head a little bit and I found it really cringy. So I DNF'd that one more than halfway through if I'm not mistaken. So number 4 was Polysecure by Jessica Fern. I would give that one a yes because of the information it held, though it did seem, actually I lied, maybe, because there were some parts where it felt a little repetitive and just overly detailed, especially for a book that was supposed to be for beginners. Also, maybe because I shouldn't have read that in the summertime. It was way too heavy for the vibes that I look for out of summertime reads. It was just a lot, but it did have some good information and some takeaways, so I will give it that. Yeah, I just wanted to be informed and like learn about something. That was that book, but definitely that book was the thing that made me feel like no more heavy reads for the rest of the summer. Everything needs to be light and airy. So maybe. The 5th book I read this month was Yanu, Child of Wonder by Roy Akupe. And that one was a comic or like graphic situation, but it was really nice. I love the Nigerian representation and just like the research that seemed to have gone into the book. I thought it was really nice and I definitely look forward to the rest of the series. I don't know if I said, but that one was a yes for me. 6th book was Mame by Jessica George. That one is an absolute hell yes. I love that book, not only for the first gen representation, but the story, even though it definitely harped on grief, it wasn't in a way that was like dreary. You know what I mean? It wasn't like super just overly sad. I love that in this story, the character was finding herself because she kind of was a late bloomer, so to speak. And so she experienced a lot of things behind her peers. And so a lot of the story was her finding herself with that when it came to men and like speaking up for herself and boundary setting and just all of those things. So I really thought that was nice to read. I would say if you're a fan of anything Issa Rae does, Insecure, Awkward Black Girl, if you're a fan like Michaela Coel, it kind of just gave me like Queenie mashup, chewing gum mashup with Insecure / Awkward Black Girl. So if you're into any of that stuff, you would like this book. And the cover is probably top 10 covers for me. It is stunning. It's so simple because it's like flowers, but it's gorgeous. 7th book is Worth Her Salt by Stephanie Berchioli. Read this one on Kindle. I would give this one a yes. It was almost a no. It was actually almost a DNF because the story had me so lost in the beginning. but it picked up maybe midway through and things started clicking and making sense, because I think what threw me off was that there were multiple POVs. And I don't think the world building and the length of the book warranted how many points of view there were, but there were a lot of POVs in that book. So I think it was throwing me off. But once I got into the stories and I was starting to remember the characters and stuff, it was really enjoyable to read, and I felt very satisfied by the ending. So I'll give that one a yes. Of course, I got lipstick on here. Of course, I did. The next one was The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. This is a book that I think everyone should read at least once in their lifetime. Absolutely. And I see why the book is as popular as it is, and I definitely see myself reading it at least once a year. It's one of those books you can get through it in one sitting, but it's so invaluable as far as information and just motivation and just a refresher of like what's important. So that's a yes, if that wasn't clear. Number 9 was Girls That Invest by Simran Kaur. That was a really good book. Definitely a point of reference that I will be going back to. It's just, again, I don't know why it was so deep in my nonfiction bag this month, because that one was a little bit heavy in information for where my brain was. I got through it, but I am going to have to go back to really absorb and take notes and stuff. But yeah, that one is a yes. Number 10 is Pardon My Frenchie by Farah Roshan. That one was really good. I love the cover. The story was cute. I would give that one a maybe. It did kind of drudge on a little bit for me. I feel like the story perhaps could have been resolved a bit sooner than it did, but it still was overall enjoyable. So I would give that one a maybe. Number 11 is Keepy to Myself by Brienne Dene. This one caught my eye because it was highly, highly, highly rated on Goodreads, but I'm giving it a maybe because there were just some cringy parts in the story for me, and I felt like it was giving very much like hood soap opera, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that as far as books. It's just in this particular situation, maybe because I was reading like heavy stuff right before, but it was just like, okay. So I can see why people think it's a good story. It's just maybe at the time that I read it, it wasn't like hidden like that. So that was a maybe. Number 12 is Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. If you follow me on anywhere that I heavily talk about books, whether that's Goodreads or TikTok or whatever, you know how highly I speak of Kennedy Ryan's pen. And this book is no exception. Amazing writing, phenomenal writing, something I aspire to. For it to be so simplistically written, but at the same time so complex, not only in ideas and how thoughtfully crafted the writing was. Because one thing about Kennedy Ryan, she's gonna do her research. Knowing that like the first book I read from her, which was Before I Let Go, was about grief as it relates to childbearing and then divorce and like that whole thing and the feelings associated with that. Now this book is about DV and some of those like heavier topics, and it was really really serious, and it definitely made me tear up, but that's not the reason why I think it's a good book. I think it's just her writing and her ability to inform and like take you to a place and put you in that person's shoes is very unique and unmatched. And I see consistently why she has the acclaim that she has, because she is just phenomenal and is one of my favorite writers of all time. Like, just amazing. So, naturally, in my August hopefuls, there's another book by her in there, but we'll get to that in another video. But this is a hell yes. And I also believe that every woman should read this book at least once. So, number 13 is Home is Not a Country by Safia El Hilo. This book was phenomenal in ways that I didn't expect. The cover definitely drew me in, but I was not expecting the writing and the storytelling and just the format of the book. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I highly recommend this book if you're first generation, because you're likely to just identify with more things than you would anticipate. It's really, really good. I can't say anything else. That one is a hell yes. Number 14 is a book that I'm still currently reading. So by the time this video is out, I'll probably be done reading it. However, as it stands, like I started it in July, but it didn't really, I'm still getting through it. So I'm not going to give it a yes, no, or maybe, but I will tell you what it is. And it is The Perfect Seduction by Brenda Jackson, which is my first Brenda Jackson book. She's also quite acclaimed and has like hella books under her belt in the literary space. So that is that. The next one is Mr. Right Now, which is part of the Bays of Juneteenth series by Cheryl Lister. This one I'm going to give a no. Just keeping it real, it wasn't memorable for me. And there's a bit that I would have done differently in the story. So I'm not going to just shit on it, but it was just simply a no. 16 was Yours for the Weekend by Queen Ray. I'm going to talk my shit a little bit on this one because it is a no, but I'm going to tell you why. This book is a no for me because though it was a novella, which even means that to me, it being a novella means there was even more of an opportunity to shave down what was unnecessary. And without spoiling, there's like, because I'm going to say this because it kind of comes out basically in chapter one, but there's like an element of like the male main character being like a big cheater or whatever. But I feel like the storyline could have held up without that whole entire aspect of the book, of him being like a consistent hoe or whatever. Sorry, I'm not trying to like go in on the characters or just whatever, but that storyline could have existed without the drama of him having a fiance and being a dog. Because the story was basically like these group of girls, these group of guys taking a trip out to Houston. And they basically are like hoeing for the most part. They just trying to just hang out, get it in. No one's talking about love. No one's talking about relationship. It's just a weekend rendezvous type beat. And I feel like that could have existed for all parties involved. And it could have been still a good story without that element of like, oh yeah, he's being a dog to his fiance. Because mind you, the fiance didn't even make an appearance in the story. There was like almost no dialogue outside of her like texting him a bunch of times and calling him. There was like nothing. So it leads me further to believe that the whole story could have been good and existed outside of that storyline. So it's a no for me. It's more than a no. I appreciate the Houston representation because that's my city, but other than that, it's not given. And I'm not, again, I don't mean to shit on anyone. I respect writing, I respect the art form of writing and all that it takes to become an author, but it just wasn't good. And the people just going back and reading the Goodreads things, it's like everyone is kind of saying the same thing. And the story on top of that, for it to be a whole day vu, it was very unfinished in that regard. It was a very heavy month. And August is probably going to be just as heavy, but I have faith in myself and I believe in myself. So with that, I'm just going to wrap up with a quick tip because I did get a question on TikTok some time back about like how I'm able to read so many books in a month. And as someone who was reading damn near zero, like I was maybe getting like a one book, 1 to 5 books a year if I was lucky. And as someone who formerly loved to read, and I feel like reading is like one of my foundational building blocks for not only who I am as a person, but like basis of like my intelligence and everything else. As that person, the biggest thing is obviously making it a priority. So times when I'm realizing like, hey, I'm doom scrolling a little bit too much. I could be reading something. I'll do that. Because if you actually pick stuff that you're interested in and you like, it's going to be hard to put the book down anyway. You know what I mean? Like, don't read stuff just because it's highly recommended or highly acclaimed. Pick what makes sense to you. If it's all manga, let it be all manga. If it's all graphic novels, let it be all graphic novels. If it's only fiction, let it be only fiction. But don't let anyone force you into feeling like you need to be reading 48 Laws of Power or The Alchemist or whatever to feel like you're well read enough. Highly recommend against infusing hustle culture into your hobbies. Please stop. Everything doesn't need to be a thing that's taking you to the next level, okay? Just for your peace of mind, just for your sanity, stop infusing hustle culture into everything that you do. If your barrier to entry for reading is the fact that you feel like you have to read boring or important things, stop. That's all you have to do is simply stop. If anything, fiction is probably the best genre of book that you can read. And this is scientifically backed because it's better for your imagination. It helps you to develop empathy. Okay. It is just overall, it helps with your creativity and getting your mind flowing in certain ways that fiction does not. Sorry, in the ways that nonfiction does not. Nonfiction most times is reference material, it's truth, it's whatever, but in your real life, how often are you escaping the truth? The truth is always around you. So I know that people think that fiction is a waste of time because it's like it's an imaginary world, but that doesn't mean it's not based off of real shit. You know what I mean? But regardless, everyone read the kind of fiction that you want to read. I just highly recommend reading fiction. I highly recommend it. It doesn't have to be romance. It can be fantasy. It can be whatever. Just read more fiction. That is my biggest message. Also, last tip is don't stick to any one medium. As I said and will continue to reiterate and say again and say more times, is that I read across different mediums because that is what helps me to stay consistent with what I like to do, which is reading. I make the barriers of entry very low for myself. So some days I'm too busy and I can only do an audiobook because an audiobook allows me to still be hands-free and just have something in my headphones while I still move around and do my things. I may not be able to sit down and hold a physical copy or sit down and hold my Kindle, but I'm still getting my reading done. Some days I need the gamification of a Kindle. I need to see how much progress I'm making in a book because that gives me a little bit of dopamine boost or whatever to help me get through the act. And some days I just need the tactile feeling of just holding a book and flipping a page and putting a bookmark somewhere. Sometimes I need that. So don't stick to any one thing. Make it interesting for you. If you like to do multiple things, do multiple things. Sometimes I'll like mix the two. Sometimes I'll have an audiobook while I'm reading the physical or while I'm reading the Kindle, and the retention is amazing. The experience is like amazing because I'm just having fun with it and I'm doing it my way. And that's just all I can ask for people when they're doing their hobbies is to do it your way. Okay? There are no rules as long as you try and you get it done. Okay? I'm no better than anyone else. Like I said, it's not even about the numbers. It's because I love books so much. No one has given me an award or a prize for this. I just love books and want to read as many as I can of them before I croak. That's it. So yeah, I hope y'all enjoy this video. I know I kind of went on a rant there at the end, but I speak the way I do because of the passion that I have. So, but yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see each other again at the end of the month to see what I was able to do. Let me know what you guys are reading. Definitely interested. Give me some suggestions. I'm constantly adding to my TBR, to my Goodreads, to all my things. So I also talk about books on my TikTok in a more short form, condensed way. So feel free to follow me on there at cassienaija. I'm on IG, cassie.naija. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in as always. Love and light, peace and blessings, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye. I know it's been too long. I've been on the road too much. Gotta get back to you. That do you. Can't even play.